What if scaling a business wasn't about doing more, but about becoming more, fully expressed in who you already are? So, welcome back to Voices of Impact, where we explore the stories, perspectives, and leadership journeys that reveal what's possible when identity, voice, and purpose come into alignment. Today's conversation is a powerful reminder that sustainable success isn't just built through only strategy. Yes, it's important, but there's more to it. It's built through authenticity, expression, and the courage to be seen. So I'm honored to welcome Lee to the show. Lee is a relationship coach and business strategist who helps authors, coaches, and thought leaders bridge the gap between the inner truth and public expression. So his work sits at a powerful intersection where emotional depth meets entrepreneurial growth and where writing becomes a foundation for leadership, influence, and scalable business expansion. So, but behind his framework is a deeper philosophy that visibility isn't something you chase, it's something you become. That your voice isn't developed after success, it's what creates it. And that the path to sustainable growth is often slower, actually true sustainable success, right? More intentional and more identity driven than the dominant scale fast narrative that we are pretty much kind of against, right? So, what makes this conversation especially aligned is that we both believe in that there's a foundation, and that's very important. We call it authentic expression. So, we're going to talk about this in this conversation. Visibility blocks, which I've also had, right? A lot of people are struggling with it, are often signals of next level growth. So, it's, in a way, it's good. And imposter syndrome dissolves through repetition and expression. So, in this episode, we'll explore what it really means to move from writing in private and to owning your voice publicly and really owning it. So, from internal clarity to visible leadership, and from hesitation to embodied expression. So, Lee, welcome to Voices of Impact. So glad to have you on the show.
Athena, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Let's go into it. So, Lee, you sat at a fascinating intersection. I know you were a therapist before, relationship coach is amazing, and now like an author, entrepreneur. So, how did all these two worlds, or all of the stuff
How did we get here?
work and business eventually come together for you? And I can relate to this story because
Yeah.
I'm there, but yeah, I love to dive in.
So I think some of it, entrepreneurial, is way back in my life. I was, so my nerdiness as a teenager, I was a magician back then.
Oh,
And started a magic club at our high school. But I was doing performances for money even when I was 13 and was already charging for birthday parties and that kind of thing. So entrepreneurship was kind of in my blood from pretty early on. But I set it aside because I thought, well, I'll be a therapist and I'll sit in an office and work in an agency and maybe I'll lead the agency, but that'll be it. The problem is after I spent a couple of masters and a PhD getting the training for that, I started getting disenchanted with the outcome results of marital therapy. Just to be clear, marital therapy was what I was concerned about. There are other issues, other places, but that was my place of concern of watching how ineffective marital therapy is. And so I went from therapist and working, getting my training there to immediately entering into, and I'd been in practice for a number of years at that point, but I immediately went after I finished my PhD and got some training in coaching. Well, coaching is by its nature more entrepreneurial, but more than that, I felt like I owed it to myself and to what I was doing to say, if I'm disenchanted with this, what do I believe is the alternative? Like, what is the other side of this? And so that started the writing. At that point, it was trying to create a guide for people who were stuck in their marriage and didn't know what to do, because I felt like that was who was the therapy was failing for. And so I created this book, and this would have been in 98 when I was writing it, 99 when I put it online. So 1999, way last century, rinky-dink website, but it started selling. And so it took me a little while to realize as I'm sitting in my office and people were calling me that something was changing. And then as I realized what was going on, I realized I'd created a business. And I know that world. So I stepped back into entrepreneurship in there and realized that the book had started that, which meant that other pieces could come together if I was strategic in how I use my writing, how I use my voice, how I tried to be in the world. And so some of those things I tried. I was trying to do podcasting before there was any podcasting platform. And let me tell you, it was a pain. Now And even in the time I've been doing it, which I've been a regular podcaster for, I think, 13 years now, the way you can do it now is so much easier than back then, but that was so much easier than what it was before. So there, these things that you see that you can step into because technology allows it.
Right.
And that's kind of where we are now with books. So now I've written 7 books, a couple of journals, created a lot of online courses, and that's been my way of letting people know that there is a different way of being in a relationship. And that also led me to realize that authors are stuck in certain places too. And so as I was having more conversations with authors, that's when I realized that I also could help people find a different path there too. So long answer to your question.
I love that. No, this is a great I love the storytelling aspect of it and you sharing your story. It's like so interesting. And even back then in the 99, because I was like, what, like maybe like 10 years
Oh,
older.
they'll say that.
I was like, I was like 10. I'm like, is this, would you like, do you really do this? Because I was brought up from a place of conservative, like, hey, let's just go to school, let's
Hmm.
just go to tech
Right.
world. And
Yeah.
I started blogging actually after college. So I'm also a writer, a publisher, an author. And I started blogging as well, and I can relate. And I was just, at the time where how this really started was I didn't have a place or platform to share my voice. And coming from that family and conditioning, I wasn't supposed to like speak my truth. So I would always
Hmm.
write something. And especially back then, no one was like, my parents were like, why are you blogging? Like, what's the point of this? Go back to corporate, go to tech, right? So the fact that you're saying all of this and you wrote so many books and you're an author, and of course, the whole relationship coaching piece and the entrepreneurship, how you really intersected those two is very inspiring. And I would love to hear more. And it starts out from just your passion of writing, but at the end of the day, you actually are more visible and you're more able to like share your voice and gives permission for others to share their voice, right? And I do agree with the podcasting piece. I would listen to it. This is very new. Like I said, I just started podcasting like 5 months ago. So I was like, it's gonna get famous and popular. And I'm like, it's not for the trend, but it's really for me to start this to own and help others own their voice, right? So I appreciate you all sharing this because I think it's a very important piece. And a lot of people that I've talked to, including me, we've struggled with that visibility block. And going into my next question is what do you think nowadays the challenges are, especially in coaching and entrepreneurs? What are some things that they misunderstand about this deep transformation? We talk about identity work, right? And the deep transformation that we go through and how you turn that into a scalable business because people think it's like how do you bridge the soul and the strategy piece, right? So
Yeah.
what are some people that misunderstand about this?
Yeah. So for me, one of the things that helps me is to remember that the strategy is not about me being like a influencer or anything else. The strategy is about a message that I think needs to be out there. That is one of the resets that I encourage authors to make. There are plenty of people who are years ago now, I was at a conference that was for people who were kind of in the coaching consulting world. And I turned to the guy and it was like the experts was kind of how they'd framed it. Here are the experts in the room. So I turned to the guy and I said, well, so tell me about your expertise. And he said, well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I just know I want to be an expert. And I'm like, I feel like we're moving the wrong direction with that. You build your expertise before you can decide you're an expert. And he was kind of going, I'm going to be an expert somewhere. Let me figure out the pieces of how to be viral and how to be out there. And what I realize is that when people are connected to a message,
Yeah.
they are not likely to be so pulled by the ego. And that's the trap, right? When you start being bound by the ego of what are the likes and what are the,
Mhm.
whatever else is reviews and whatever else gets tied in there, then you get pulled into trying to be popular.
Mhm.
And I feel like sometimes we never quite get out of middle school, high school,
Right.
trying to figure out how it can be me.
Exactly.
And yet we all have a message. And when I talk with authors, they have a message
Mhm.
that if they can get behind that, it's not nearly as frightening as trying to be the person. That's where the imposter syndrome kicks in and lots of other pieces where they block themselves because they are now suddenly going, I have to be this instead of my message is about this. Who does my message help? How does that align with who I am? So your message has to align with you. I don't know how many days pass before I see another message or another story about some influencer that they realize is not living what they
Yeah,
built their whole platform on, right? And that doesn't work because they're living out of integrity. It's always going to um, be found. It's always going to show itself. People who are aligned with their message and stand behind their message, they are the messengers of that message, are the ones who keep on moving and are willing to do what it takes to get the message out there and are not so caught up into what really are the headwinds of being online. I mean, you do have people trolling and you do have comments and emails and messages that you have to say, that's not about me. My
exactly.
message is what I'm pushing.
Exactly. And you just hit the nail on the head on that because I was there, right? And a lot of people were like, you should be an author. And I built my authority from that place of like, everyone's just in their ego, right? This is about me. This is what I'm here to do. I'm an author. I'm a bestseller. Let me just put it on my LinkedIn. Let me just put it on that. And then even now, I still see people doing that. Even the whole content, they post content for just likes. And in my case, like every single time, they're like, Mina, like, I see your post, but the likes aren't there. Even now, I still get emails with my podcast. Like I get a lot of like inbound, but like, you don't get any views, like the SEO is not there. And I'm just like, I'm not doing it for the likes
Right.
or to be popular or those, top 10% podcasts, right? Or any even my book, like I didn't really like sell it for that place of like I want to be a bestseller. It was just a message. And I loved what you said is it has to align with who you are and who you're becoming. If you don't know the message and you're just doing it from a place of an I thing, it's not gonna work. And you're not gonna, it's probably just not gonna even sell. You're not gonna impact many people. So you want to start it from a genuine intention, like you said, knowing your why. Like, why do I want to be an author? What's the purpose of this? And sometimes it really comes from your lived experiences, right? I was talking to a lot of women, including me, we had a lot of painful moments in our life, and we turned that into a powerful narrative. And we're here to shine a light for others and make an impact. But how do we kind of share that? It depends on the channel. So some people could be writing. So I started out with writing, but it just didn't reach as much people. And I'm also an author and I published it. And I actually shared my own story. It's a self help book about living a dual identity and how I overcame that identity. And I'm in my power now. And now I went into the speaking and I realized my gift is speaking. So you really have to really know yourself and align. Because who I was like 5 years ago, I was really good at writing. And I still am, but now I'm just like very my zone of genius is speaking because that's who I'm becoming, right? So you have to make sure that you truly know yourself. And I love how you said they're the messengers. If you believe in God or the universe, there's a reason why we're the messengers, and we want to share that. And there are a lot of blocks, right? And what if like I'm be seen? What if like you talked about trolling? What if people judge me? And that's actually like my next question is, some people are obviously trying to be seen. And like I said, I still have conversations coming to me saying like, but Vina, like, people post content and I have to be seen. Like I have to be on a podcast, like 20 podcasts a month. Like this is how marketing works. This is how I get clients. Right. So there's a lot of performance going on, but how would you shift that performance to like authentically just showing up as you and becoming someone who's like naturally visible like you and
So there is a tension that I don't want to disregard the fact that I do think about how can I best get out this message? Because if I believe in my message, I want my message to be seen by the people who need to see it. And as many people as possible to see that message. And that is the tension, right? And so instead of it going viral for viral sake, like for clicks sake, for views sake, getting something to be noticed is part of getting that message out there. And the ones who struggle with that, often it's because they have that imposter syndrome going on. Like they're afraid to really let it flourish the way it could. And so there is the tension between those two things. But the fact is that I am pretty clear there is a very big separation between me and my message. People can say whatever they want about me. I have one of my pet sayings is your opinion of me is none of my business. So I don't want to hear it. I get the messages, but I don't allow it very far in. And that's just part of this world that we live in. That's just the nature of it. And so one of the things that I am aware of is that when we are when we're not getting any feedback, you're probably not really honed in on your voice. There are going to be people who are attracted to a voice and the people who are going to be not attracted to the voice. Repelled's probably too strong, but push against. And in today's world, vanilla is just that. I mean, there's tons of, if you want a plain vanilla idea about anything, ask AI. It'll be happy to give you a very plain vanilla thing. And that's not going to move people very far. And that's the problem with the advice world now that's just got the AI invasion right now, is it's just the same old. People who have a message that makes a difference are going to have people who don't like that. And they're going to have people who love it. And the people who don't like it tend to attack things that are separate from the message a lot of the time. And
Right.
who is that? The person who's out there. And so we do have to be aware of that block. I've been asked repeatedly by authors, like, I'm afraid to do these things. And I'm like, okay, that's your imposter syndrome kicking in. That's what's blocking you. And they constantly tell me, I want to get rid of imposter syndrome. And here is what I know. If you don't have imposter syndrome, you are a dangerous person. The only ones who do not have imposter syndrome are the sociopaths and psychopaths of the world. The rest of us, if we're going to step into something, are going to have that. And so it's not whether we have that. That's the human nature of doubting ourselves. It's not whether we have that. I guess last week I had somebody who said, I can't believe it. I got my first 1-star review, and just kept on and on going about 1-star review on Amazon. I said, let me pull up your thing. And 25 4 and 5-star reviews, 1-star review. And I asked, tell me what came out of the 4 and 5-star reviews. Well, I don't know. Okay, tell me what the 1-star review said. And they could quote it. And I just asked the question, what are you paying attention to? So the 1-star review is somebody that lets everybody else know who's in that category that this is not for them. It's just creating a way for the sorting. That's what those things are. They're sorting mechanisms. If you've got people who are 4 and 5-star reviewing, notice that.
Exactly.
They are the ones who are behind your message. So that is one of the ways that we kind of manage that. It's a reality check. Imposter syndrome is an emotional feeling. And then we can realistically step back and go, oh, let's look at what I've done. So let's go back to my buddy at the conference that was looking for the expertise to step into. My guess is he wouldn't take very long before it's not imposter syndrome. He would be an imposter if he pretended to be an expert in something at that moment. Now, it's been years. He could be an expert in something now. I don't know. But at that moment, if he was professing to be an expert in something of which he had not built expertise, that's a different matter. For those who have built their expertise, finding out how to share that message in ways that it's received is part of this training ground. And many times people write a book the first time and it didn't do what they wanted. That didn't mean that they were off. It's meant that they're learning a process. And I don't know how many authors I've read their first book. I went, oh, I can see how far they've come by their third, fourth, fifth book because they stuck with it. It's not that their message changed. They got better at delivering the message. And that's our task. If we are in that realm of helping people, of having a message, of sharing that to the world, we are there to improve our skills. So the other side of that is imposter syndrome can hold us back, but it can also just be a reminder that I'm constantly trying to improve how I deliver that. Yeah. So how can I do it better?
Right. Absolutely. And it's very key what you said was consistently showing up, because at times when I had that visibility block, I would just write. Right. And I think it's okay to be an author and write, but sometimes it's like you're not fully expressing yourself at times. And that's what my mentor said. Right. And if you have a gift, you have to kind of look within. And sometimes it is scary. I'm not going to lie. And like, what will people think? I love what you said. There are going to be people who might hate on you, who might not like what you're doing, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to resonate with what you're going to say. Right. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And we talk about this. I love LinkedIn. I have, networked a lot of people, but it's always about the AI and the tech. And sometimes I talk about identity work and the soulful, and it just doesn't resonate. I don't get that many likes. Right. But when I did my podcast and I speak on it, even if no one shows up, I still have a message to share. And the whole point of this is, even if it's one person that will be resonating with this, it's just one person can impact. It could just be like even a simple thing, right? It doesn't even have to be like 20 likes. I never look at my likes. I'm like, I'm still here. I know someone's watching. Maybe they won't say anything about it. Maybe they're shy to say something, but it's not for everyone, right? No one's going to resonate with what I'm going through or anyone's going through. Not everyone is, but the right person will, and they will reach out. And I just pivoted my business and my branding. Like I said, I started my podcast not even 5 months ago, and it's for 50 episodes in. I get like 30 inbound guests. And I imagined this would have happened, right? So I had to really overcome those fears of visibility. Like, why do I have the imposter syndrome? Because I had the fear growing up that like I wasn't supposed to talk about my past or what I was going through or this kind of story. So I had to work and rewire my conditioning. And to your point, where we call it a mindset shift, like, okay, what if that one person can really resonate? And I went from
Hmm.
there and I overcame it. But at the same time, I just didn't do it once. I was like, it's fine if no one really listens to the podcast. Let me just put it out there. And I showed up every single day. And now we're at 50 episodes and 50 in 5 months, right? I just kept showing up. Maybe I'll find that one or two people who understand and be like, hey, I'm going through the same thing, and make them feel seen and heard. And that's my message, right? My message is to make people feel seen and heard. I was able to share my voice. Can I give you the platform? And it has done so much for them, right? And it's very important to, yes, one first piece is the writing, but sometimes I feel like you really want to put yourself out there. Maybe there is a part of you that's like stopping yourself from getting on podcasts, from doing conferences or, virtual summits, right? Or even going in person. So you want to make sure that you're showing up consistently without even having anyone being there with you or supporting you or rooting for you. So I think you actually answered my next question, which was like people know their message, but they're just like, I don't know where to find the right people due to the fear of like judgments. So that was something that I wanted to ask. And I
Well,
think,
so let's talk about it a little bit more because I do think that there is something to be said for asking the question, "Where's my audience? Like, where
yeah.
would they tend to be?" And I do think that that's a fundamental, foundational piece for anybody to figure out. I believe in writing, speaking, whatever to one person. You and I are having this conversation. So other
Mhm.
people might overhear it, but you and I are having this conversation. When I'm writing a book, I'm writing to one person. I imagine, on the other side, when I am creating anything, it's speaking to one person that I know is the person that I could help. Right. That's the one person. But I have to ask the question, where is that one person going to most likely be hanging out? Are they going to be on Facebook? Are they going to be on TikTok? Are they going to be? And so then that is more about how can I make sure that I have the most likely audience that I want. In the business world, LinkedIn would be, a place that you would be. So I think it is an important question to ask. And then to ask the secondary question of, and what do there are two, what do I enjoy doing?
Mhm.
And how could I best deliver this message? And those three things, where are they? How do I, use my skills and what's the best delivery are central to doing that. I know people who have no desire to write a book. That's great. There are other mediums, they're podcasting or speaking or other ways. There are people who only like to write. That's their medium of choice. And there are multiple ways you could write. You could write a book. You could write a blog post. You could write a guest article. I mean, there's so many different ways, newsletters, that people are going back to the printed newsletter now. So there are so many different avenues that haven't been there in the past of saying, this is how I like to do it. This is where my audience is. And this is what my message is. That it's really, if we can't find an answer, that's probably a good indication that it's time for an outside perspective, a coach or someone to be able to help you filter through what's holding you back. Because it's not what's available. There are almost too many things available, right? So it's not what's available. It's how do you make sure that you're in front of the people who would be your audience.
Absolutely. And these are really important things. I do agree because I honestly, I mean, I do speaking. A lot of people, you want to make sure it aligns with you, whatever medium you're using. So a lot of people are maybe speaking is not your zone of genius or it's not your cup of tea. And that's okay, right? Maybe it is author, maybe it is writing. But whatever it is, you want to make sure that it's coming from an authentic place and it's your voice and it's your story. Because I feel like a lot of people are just, oh, let me just write a book because my friend is doing it. And I
Hmm.
think that's the best way to build a business
Hmm.
is this is for a low ticket. I'll just do it. But it's not for that, like you said. And it's very important that we touch on the fact that your voice really matters. And that's why it's really going back to the why piece, as always, is the strategy is important, right? And we know the audience, but you have to really know where the right people are. Sometimes you might not know, right? I didn't have any idea where my audience was. My audience kept changing. As a career and executive coach, I was talking to corporates, and then I shifted into entrepreneurs. So to your point, it really is important to find a mentor
Hmm.
who really knows your gifts. Like like I invested in so many mentors who did just not to tell me. They just did not tell me what to do, right? They were just like, go and do your typical lead generation. He actually gave me the idea of like, this is what I know about you on a deeper level. This is your energy. This is your presence. You've talked to me about your story and your voice, and you couldn't share that. Why don't you start a platform for other people and share your message that way? And that's how it all started. So
Hmm.
sometimes it's very important to get an outside perspective, like Lee said. But rather than following the external validation of others, please go within and understand, why did you start this in the first place? Everyone has a unique message, and that message comes from your lived experiences.
Yeah. So,
And it,
and I might give an example of how sometimes people get misguided. So, a lot of my work now is with authors who are trying to take their book and turn it into a business.
Mhm,
That generally are self help consultant, coach, therapy kind of people. And I had a guy who came to me and he has his book and he was just like, I'm not sure if I need help. But I said, so what are you doing with your book? And he said, well, I've decided to launch a speaking career.
mhm,
And I probably added a little too much energy to what I just said to you from what he did. So I just kind of reflected back. That seems really flat. So tell me what's going on. And he said, well, I wrote my book and I have a friend who wrote a book and now is very successful speaking. And so he told
mhm.
me that's what I needed to do. And so I said, well, tell me what you've done with that. And he had gone out and printed material and gotten a
Yeah.
mailing list and invested really thousands of dollars. And I said, you don't seem excited about your business that you're building and what's going on. And he said, I can do it, but I don't really like to do public speaking. And I really like being around the home. Like I like being with my family and he travels all the time. And so my question was, why are you launching down that path? And he said, because my friend's doing it. Right. And so he had internalized an external, this is how it has to be.
Mm,
His place was to do coaching and some workshop stuff that he would create and deliver it asynchronously. So he's not even going to be doing it live. That's what he ended up with. He started with the speaking only because somebody had said, this is how you need to do it. Almost always, if somebody is telling you how you need to do it, you need to take a break and ask the question, who can help me find that? Not who
mhm,
can tell me what to do,
exactly.
because they're giving you their voice. That's not your voice.
Right. Absolutely, 1,000%. Right. It's not about following someone else's blueprint. You have to have your own blueprint. And how can you share your voice in your own aligned way? Right. And I was like there, I followed every single blueprint that everyone else said. And it got me nowhere, right? Very inconsistent revenue, burnout. And even when I started the book, I was like, I didn't write a book just because for other people. I was like, there is something I want to.
Hmm.
I didn't even know anything about writing a book, right? I did this like I think 7 years ago. And it's an ebook. And I was like, I just want to share my story. Like, this is something that if I can do, I went through 3 career transitions, built my leadership, built my authority. And if I can do it, why can I help others? And if one person reads it, they'll be like, if Nina can do it, why can't I? Right. That was my message I wanted to get out there. And it was very from a place of heart. And then that became like a business, which is coaching for me, right? So it can lead to a coaching business. I've evolved it. And now I also do, you can have like a business. I want to get into your book to business blueprint, but I think that's where the angle is going is you can build a coaching business from that book because of your message and your voice. And you can expand that voice and visibility and do still speaking engagements. I still do paid speaking engagements as well as part of my business and my consulting. right? But at the end of the day, rather than just focusing on the strategy, which most people do, and logically, this is the next step, you want to combine it with your purpose and your
Mhm.
mission first
Yeah. Yeah.
and the why. And when you combine the why and the mission, the purpose, and your values, right? What do you truly value in a book? Like, if I were to read a self help book, why would I want to read it? Not just because my friend told me, right? There's a reason why I read books, to learn something and to make myself grow and evolve, right? So that's why you want to become a better version of yourself. So first do it on your own, then change, put that message out there and help others, right? The ripple effect. And that's where you build the business. And then that's a totally different like thing, right? But just having only I'm an author just for like the sake of my friend did it is not going to help, right? And
No.
to your point, and I want to go into your blueprint, but love for you to share more about your blueprint and how people can really build that authorship, really own their voice unapologetically, and have a sustainable business further down the road.
Yeah. And so let me just describe a little bit about what that's about, and then we can dive in further. So, one of the things, the reason I started this was because some years ago I was helping my publisher put on an event. And so, because I was helping, they wanted to make sure I had a copy of everybody's book who was going to be there. And so I was looking through them, and there was this book that, it was a well-written book, great thing that could have launched this guy's business. And I found myself sitting at the table at the kind of intro time at the beginning. And I said, so tell me what happens now? What are you going to do now? And he looked at me and said, what do you mean? I'm like, you wrote the book. So what comes next? And he looked at me and just said, the book. I did the book. I'm done. And so I said, okay, you're hoping for sales of the book. That's your strategy. And he said, yeah, that's, I want this to be a bestseller. And he had great aspirations. I said, okay, that got it. And so later
Yeah.
on that week, we were at the kind of the closing dinner for this event. And he came over to the table and he sat with me. He said, why were you asking that? And I said, well, because your book has the potential of building a business.
Mhm.
And I get the feeling you don't see that. He said, I've never thought about it. And so we kind of sat there back of the napkin sketching of what could come out of that. And I started having more conversations with authors who thought that the finishing the book and getting it to the publisher and getting it out was the end of the journey. I'm like, that is, they would say, well, I think that I'm probably 90% of the way there. And I'm like, you're probably 20% of the way there. If you want
Yeah.
to actually, use this, you've done the work to get your message out there. Now, what happens with the message next? And so I've had the same conversation with many people. If you write a book that could change people and they get to the end of it and there's nothing else they can do to continue that, they've lost out.
Yeah.
Your message has lost out and you've lost out because that could be your life's work. In fact, it generally is. If you spent the time to write a book, it's likely that embedded in there is your life work. So how do you use that to be your life work? How do you expand that? So that's what the blueprint is about. One of the things that holds people back, though, is overwhelm. So they'll write a book, they realize that they can build a business, and they will buy some course that's telling them 350 things that they have to do in order to get there. And so if we have nothing to do or 350 things to do, we do nothing either way, right? We're overwhelmed or we don't know what to do. And so the blueprint creates one thing per week to move the needle forward. And that's how we build it, a piece at a time, manageably. Scale is always a scary thing to me because I think many times people are scaling on something they built on sand and they don't find it out until they are well into the process. Companies with lots of resources struggle to scale, much less somebody who is trying to take their message and form it into something valuable and hearable and consumable. That doesn't mean you can't have scale to your business. It just means that you don't start with scale. You start with intentionality.
Exactly. Absolutely. I love your blueprint. And to your point, like, and I don't blame anyone because I was guilty of this, right? And because it was like a huge thing to be a bestseller on Amazon. And I started my book intentionally. I know internally, like, I was here to share a message, and a lot of people are here, but we get so caught up in the ego and like, okay, well, let me just say sell bestseller number one on Amazon. I'm done. Yay, I can put it on, online and tell everyone. But I love how you help people really look at their potential, right? Looking at who they are at the core and their message. Like, hey, like you can start a business and make an impact and really do something about it, which is very important because no one taught me that, right? I don't think a lot of authors know this. And a lot of my friends, a lot of people, women I talk to, there, and I love how you said the overwhelming because I've been there. And till today, everyone's focused on, okay, I need to do the launch today, Vina. I need to create the graphics. Oh my God, they're so stuck in those like nitty gritty details. And I'm like, cool, yes, why not? I think that is important, but just start small. Just start on one, right? Just write an article. Like, this is my thing, this is my book, this is what I wrote about. Or just share it with a friend, or just even if it's a one podcast, just share the message. I wrote this book, this is what I did. You don't need the graphics and all of that because we're so, yeah, like everyone is like, you need the launch and let me just put it in Barnes and Nobles and all of that, right? And it sounds pretty, but at the end of the day, people keep reading your books. It's because of the message. And even I
Mm,
used to read tons of books in the library, and it was really about not the cover or anything. It was really like the message and how I felt. It gave me that emotional connection piece. That's what I understood with owning your voice and visibility is it's not about the likes. It's not about really how you write it as much or what words you use. It just has to touch someone's heart and make them feel seen and heard. You know, that the storytelling piece, the vulnerability piece. That's all I do. I don't even write too much nowadays. I'm just in 20 minutes call one person. She was like, Vina, like it was 20 minutes. She was like, you made me feel seen and heard. Like I can
mm.
totally relate to what you're saying. And that's all I do. It really starts from the mission. And I love how you said scale intentionally. You know how many people I talk to, especially in the tech world, I've seen this, that they were like, I was trying to like be a co-founder for a tech startup, like an AI, and they were like, let's scale. We're gonna go into $1 million in like 2 months. And I was like, is that possible? Like, do you think? You're like, yeah, that's possible. If we can do this, Vina. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. And I had to leave because that's not going to be sustainable, right? You
Mm,
really have to set the foundation in place. And I love how
yeah.
you teach people that. And that's where it really starts. A lot of women, especially, struggle. And that was my next question for advice. What would you say to someone, especially women, who've been through a lot of, like, I know, trauma and therapy, and they're still working on themselves? And they're like, I want to, but I'm just not ready to put it out there, or my voice isn't ready yet, but I do want to say something though. What would you say to someone like that, or where should they start?
I think it's always interesting to ask the follow up question when they tell me they're not ready is what would ready look like? And
Yeah.
at what point will you be ready? What needs to happen? What do you need to be? Who do you need to be? What needs to change? And that generally gets us beyond it's not really I'm not ready as much as I'm scared to, right? I'm scared to put my voice out there. And that's a different question than not ready. If somebody can say, this happens and this happens and this happens, and I truly am paralyzed by these things, that's a not ready. If it's I'm scared of letting people know who I am or letting people know what I can help with or whatever it is, I'm scared of that. That's a different question. That doesn't go away completely. We learn to override it, right? If when you're doing your public speaking, my guess is before you step out, you feel some anxiety. And if you don't, it's something you probably shouldn't do because you don't feel it's important enough to be anxious about. So that is the nature of things that matter to us is we feel anxiety. I've watched a lot of interviews of what I would say are outstanding actors, and each one talks about their stage fright, right? When
Yeah.
they some of them are practically incapacitated, but they do it anyway. It's
Right.
not, it's the do it anyway part of the fear equation. And when we give in to fear, so let's go with that just for a minute. I believe that fear is inescapable for humans. It's wired so deeply into our brain that we cannot go around fearlessly without it being dangerous. And so the fear is there for a reason. The fear wants you to get to the next day, but we have misused it. Fear is so I always say it's not an avoidance indicator. It's an
Mhm.
importance indicator. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people will feel the fear and go, then I need to stay away from this. I need to not do this. That's telling me that this is too early, too wrong, too not me, too whatever. And my take on it is it's just telling you that's important. whatever is going on is important. And as long as it's important, there is going to be some anxiety. Whether you cope with that, that just means that you've gone through this enough times to know how to move through it and
Yeah.
continue. So before I got on the podcast, did I feel some jitters? Of course. If not, then I would say, well, then my message means nothing to me because it's not important enough for me to say this matters. So when I write something and I hit publish, do I feel it in my gut? What are people going to think? Yes. What do
Yeah.
I do? I hit publish, right? And
Right.
that's the nature of doing anything that's going to be seen by public is recognizing that there is another side of that, and a deeply human need is to feel like we are accepted and that we matter to others. So we get pulled into that. That's human nature.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away, but we can still choose we can still choose to go speak, to hit publish,
Right.
to put out the podcast, to drop the blog post, to do whatever it is that is your way of getting the message out, not without fear, but in spite of the fear, or even because of the fear. That for a lot of people, that's how they know they actually said something that mattered is because
Yeah.
they went, "Oh, should I be saying this? Publish," and
Right.
that's an indicator for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really important. I love how you touched on the deep aspects of it because it's, yeah, like you said, we're all going to have fear. We're human, but it's really choosing to do it despite having that, like you said. And there are many times when I got out of my comfort zone. That's what coming out of your comfort zone means. And if you really want to thrive, you do have to overcome that block by being seen and overcoming your fears, like basically getting out of your comfort zone. And there are going to be people who, might not like it, like I said, but it's just choosing to still stick with it and show up. There are times when people didn't show up, right? When I did like webinars and stuff and master classes, but I was like, you know what? It's okay. Let me just keep doing it. It's for you. It's not for the other person, technically. It's just for you. The more you take aligned action, or even call messy action, just do it anyway. That's how you get clarity, right? The more you actually do something and put yourself out there despite the fear, then you're like, wait a minute, this wasn't so bad after all. Right. And everyone has anxiety, but like you, to your point, rather than just being like, oh my God, let me just not do it, being self aware. So I have this anxiety. Is there something that I can do to overcome it? Right. And I also teach about energetics and nervous system regulation. A lot of women, even now, I still do breath work. I still keep myself calm. I have something this evening, which is very new. And I'm like, what are people going to think? Right. And preparing ahead of time. But at the same time, I noticed though, when it comes to voice and visibility, when I started my podcast, I was like, is anyone going to listen to it? Who knows about identity work? Who is this even real? Like, no one talks about this stuff. Like, should I put it out there? What will like the top podcasts think? But my main message point was like, I really led with that. I was like, I want people to be real, right? I don't want this to be like a performative, it has to be perfect. A lot of people were like, hey, like your image it isn't great, or like there's no thumbnail, and I was like, no, that's not the point of this. I want to be real. I don't mind people making mistakes. I don't mind making mistakes on a podcast, right? And I realized those kind of people really liked the podcast more.
Mhm.
It reached more people because I was actually imperfect, right? I actually said I was scared and I was real with it. And a lot of people came on my podcast as guests. They were like, hey, like, I was nervous when I came in today. You know how you said, Lee, like, I was like scared, or I've never done this before. I never talked about this before. I went through like this abuse. Like we were going into stories. But honestly, I got emails today, this past couple of days saying, like, I really resonated. Thank you for
Mm.
sharing that. And I was not perfect, right? And I used to be that perfectionist. I was like, I have to come in all good and pretty and my grammar correctly and my script ready to go. And people, it was like, I actually got a feedback, right? And to your point, I got the feedback was like, Vina thinks she's so perfect. She thinks she's so all of this. Like I got like a little bit of a negative feedback. Versus when you're showing your true self, like I'm truly human, I'm scared, and that's how I got in. This is my true story. the voice becomes more clear and loud, and it really reaches the right people. So that's why visibility is like more impactful that way.
So what we're talking about here is the being human.
Yeah.
I was talking with somebody the other day who said that they now actually put like misspellings and incorrect grammar into their writing
Yeah.
because that lets people know that it's real, like it's human. And so now we're at the place where we have to be more human
Right.
because what is too plastic, what is too perfect
Yeah.
is suspicious, and overproduction is now the danger. We're at the place of recognizing that what we want is human connection,
Mhm.
and human connection is imperfect by its nature. So
Right.
that helps a lot of people to realize they don't have to do it perfectly. They just have to
Yeah.
do it and do it well. I mean, that's not an excuse to just go, I'll slop this
Exactly.
together and then people will see I'm human. It's do your best, but recognize that your best is always still going to be human.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's the point. And that's the main message that we want to get out there is the voice doesn't have, you don't have to be perfect, just be real and put it out there and with your lived experiences. So that's what all of this is about. And, as we mentioned, it's not about the external validation. This is about you and your story, but it's also really once you form your and get self-aware and you're good to go, it's really about the other person. It's not about you. So let the ego check it out the door, and you're just here to make an impact through whether it's writing, author, or a podcast. So
Mm.
I love this conversation. Very, very powerful. So what's next for you, Lee? Any new programs, initiatives, new books?
So the business book to business blueprint.com is fairly new. I started that the first of it was, I guess it went live December 2025. So that's fairly new. That's a new project. I continue to create, in fact, as we're recording this, or I guess live for those who are watching live, I'm actually doing a 1 week program that I usually do longer programs, but this 1 week is to help people understand how to connect with their spouse. So that's kind of a new way of doing this. I've got a couple of book projects that I'm working on. They're one at the end of finishing writing. I finished writing a book, and the person said, "Oh, so what happens tomorrow?" And I'm like, "I start the next one." I mean, like, there's not an end to this.
I know.
We just keep on doing. And so right now, I focus on a lot on keeping the plate spinning on the things I've got, but always looking for new ways of delivering and how do we help people the best with different coaching approaches. What I've loved recently about this book to business blueprint is that I get to talk with authors who are like, I want to do something different,
Right.
and they get back to their message. And there's nothing more exciting than people who have a message that needs to get out. It's like it's this canned thing in there, and we're like, oh, let's figure out how to get that spread out. So that's one of my joys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate because every day I have these conversations. I don't even think of it as work. We don't think of it as a business or work. It's really a fulfilling journey. And the more you talk to people, the more, like Lee said, you kind of learn more about yourself. Maybe the direction changes. Like for me, my direction changed completely in the past 5 months. And I learned more about myself. I learned more about other people. And like some people struggle with visibility. Some people are like, hey, like we're out there and owning it. Right. So we're all here to help each other. So thank you so much for sharing that,
Yeah,
Lee.
thank you.
And thank you for your depth today. What stands out most from this conversation is that visibility is not a performance, it's an integration so that your voice doesn't emerge from any pressure, external validation, someone else did it. Emerges from yourself, from your inner alignment, and also practice, like really putting yourself out there consistently. And for everyone listening, I hope this conversation reminds you that your voice doesn't need to be perfected before it's shared. It just needs to be heard. You need to go within and hear yourself and own it before you put it out there. And when you own it, you give the others to have the permission to own themselves and speak their truth. And it's okay to speak it out, right? And that's what something I've struggled with. And I was able to do that. And I'm helping others through Voices of Impact. And it also needs to be lived and embodied, right?
Mm.
So as you're doing, you're helping the next generation. So before we close, I want to share something exciting. So, Sovereign Rise is officially opening its ecosystem of aligned founders and leaders who are building from this identity reinvention and authentic expression. So, even in this early stage, what's already been incredible is like we've been having so many collaborators, referrals, partnerships, and they're organically forming. almost like the right people are finding each other, right? It's really an amazing collaboration so far. And the intention is really simple but powerful. It's very similar to what we talked about. So we're building live PR platforms, visibility platforms to have people really own their voice, right? Just like Lee said, he helps them really express it. Similar to that, we have these platforms that we have to really, boost your confidence. And the intention is really to give women and men, authors, thought leaders, speakers, the right rooms to have that safe space to share it, the right people and the right environments, so that you're not like shrinking or performing and all of that. So if you are a speaker, podcast host, author, and you're in the process of launching a book or building your platform, the founding membership is currently free. So I'd love to genuinely connect with all of you. And if you feel called to contribute as a collaborator or a partner, there's space for that too. So we're building this intentionally with the right people at the center. And you can reach out to me via LinkedIn and reach out to LinkedIn, of course, for Lee for everything that you're doing. So thank you so much. Until next time, keep honoring your voice, trust your timing, and remember that your expression is the bridge between who you are and the impact that you're here to create. So thank you.